Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and I don't know why I try not to say that, but it's like every time I try not to say it, I stumble for some reason. It messes up the beginning of my video, so it's like I almost have to have a opening line to just to get me going. I don't know if that's how everybody else is, because I know there are a lot of booktubers who have like an opening to their channel, and unfortunately I'm not one of those lucky people that can just jump into talking about it without having some kind of introduction sentence. But anyway, we are on another week of Victober, and unfortunately I don't have the book no longer in my possession that I had just finished, because I am working all this weekend from Thursday to Sunday, so I didn't know if I would get a chance to go to the library before or after work. So I figured I better do it today while I'm off, but the book I did finish was Worthen Heights this week. And that was so good. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. It's basically like a relationship not to follow. Relationship not example to not follow. It's about the Earnshaws and the Lintons, 2 families that live on the same piece of land, but it's or as they would say, the moors. And the Earnshaws took in this young boy, Heathcliff, who I believe he's half. I can't think of what the Romani. I think that's what they are, Romani, aka gypsies, which I remember learning not that long ago, earlier this year, that the word gypsy is kind of insulting to the Romani culture. It's like not politically correct. But I've just always called them, because in fantasy people always call them gypsies. I mean, even on the show Charmed, I think they referred to them as gypsies. But anyway, I've been talking about it on and off in my last couple of vlogs. But these 2 are just such horrible, cruel human beings, and so selfish. And I wouldn't even call it love what they have in the story of Wuthering Heights. For me, they may think they love each other, but I think it's more obsession and passion, and maybe a little bit of lust for each other. And then they basically their relationship infects everybody in their lives, including the next generation when they end up having kids. But Heathcliff was treated like he was this half Romani boy who was taken by the Earnshaws, and everyone in that family bullied him and was cruel to him. So he grew up bitter and angry, and he's taking out his anger on this family. And even Kathy herself kind of messed with him a lot and mocked him quite often. And when she is offered marriage by Edgar Linton, he overhears it and finds out that yes, she loves him, but she can never marry him. He runs away and then changes himself physically, and he comes back as now a man. He's gone through his soul searching and that journey of self-discovery, and has come back. And of course, it's made, ironically, he hasn't become a better person, in my opinion. He's become a worse person, in my humble opinion. And it's just, this is such a complicated, such a fascinating story. It's like people who love watching reality shows about families, like the Kardashians, or the family in Chrisley Knows Best. I don't remember what their last name is. Although they're compared to although the Kardashians aren't as horrible, it's just aren't that bad. But what even better example? They're like the housewives of L.A. or New York City or Las Vegas. That so dysfunctional, so horrible, and you wonder why they're you wonder how they function as a unit. And that's how I think this story is. It's just like, at the same time, you can't look away from it. You just have to keep, in this case, reading it just to see what happened. And, you know, there, and the women, as Jennifer Brooks pointed out in her video where she was discussing her favorite Victorian literature, and she's, I believe, rereading this book, so I'll have to see if she does a review video herself, or writes a review on Goodreads. I don't even know if she has a Goodreads account. I can't remember if she does, or, but anyway, she talked about how there's 3 women in this story that are so, like, fascinating, such strong women. Not necessarily in the best way, but still, like, you gotta give them their props, and they're, you know, you gotta be, like, they're so interesting to read about. And they're not people to, or at least one of them is not a character you should follow their example, and that's Kathy Earnshaw, later Linton. You shouldn't, like, she's definitely not someone you should look up to, but she reminds me of Scarlett O'Hara a lot, and I don't know, and I think my first question when I started reading the book was, who's worse, Scarlett or Kathy? And I think Kathy's worse, especially because she does not learn and grow as a person. She does not become a better person and learn from her mistakes and learn from her selfishness. She just gets more and more selfish to, you know. Well, Scarlett does learn, although she regresses in this, there's a sequel that another author wrote about called Scarlett, and there is a miniseries version of that one, where, like, she goes to, first she goes to South Carolina where Rhett lived, but she doesn't get him back because he's done with her BS, and then she eventually goes to her father's home country in Ireland to stay with that family. And like I said, she kind of regresses and commits old habits. But which it's a good book, by the way. I mean, it may not be as good as the original Gone with the Wind book, but it still is a very engaging story. And it does kind of give closure for Rhett, and it gives closure for Rhett and Scarlett. But anyway, I just think Kathy's a lot worse than Scarlett, in all honesty. But there are so many times I just wanted to strangle them and slap them, and just, I hated both of them, but at the same time I loved their story. It was so fascinating. It's also not that long of a book to get through. I mean, I think Jane Eyre is longer than Wuthering Heights. Now, I'm going to have to read something by Anne at some point. I don't know. I'll have to, but unfortunately, Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre were the only ones that I saw at the library. So it's a bit of a, like, I don't know if I want to buy it or not. I mean, that's the problem with the library. It doesn't always have the book. It doesn't have every book that I want to read all the time. Like, it only had one Anthony Trollope book, and it was a book in the series, so I couldn't read. I ended up having to return it today, so I couldn't get it. So I couldn't read it because it would spoil, and I don't know if I would be confused or not. So I ended up returning that, but I am also reading, well, first I thought I could get away with reading Rebecca for Victober, but I think this was published in the 30s. Let me see, let me look at the copyright date. Yeah, it was published in 38. I did not realize that. I thought it was Victorian literature, but it's not. But, I mean, it might be set in Victorian era. I don't know. But either way, I need to get to it. Like, actually, so today my day kind of got a little upset today. Not, like, upset as in angry, annoyed. Because my mom does not like clutter. And on some level, now that I'm a little more calm, I do understand that she wants the house to be clean, including my room, and neat and tidy, and I respect that, but then at the same time, I'm a mood reader, and some of those books, I just wasn't in the mood for at the time, and I planned on getting to them, and they were all kind of in corners in my room, and my mom does not, like I said, she doesn't like clutter. Now, I will, in her defense, there's one, not just that I do get it when I'm not angry about it and not annoyed, but it also gave me motivation to be like, okay, I need to get rid of these books. Like, at least I know that the Night Circus is, and I have seen it at the library. I hope, so I could get that. If I want to reread that one, I could get it from the library. So that one is gonna go, my copy of that one. Which, again, it's just so funny that I read that book long before BookTube came into my life. Like, I read that years ago, and I remember loving it, and that's why I wanted to reread it again, because it's been a while since I read it. Like, it's been a few years. But then I just wasn't in the mood for it. And then I wanted to read Victorian literature all this month. Although, like I said, I'm also reading this one. But I think this is set in Victorian time. I think. It's just not, it wasn't written in that time. So, it did, and I finally decided, okay, I needed to get rid of, and I may be committing a sin on BookTube, because this author is very popular on BookTube, and I did enjoy reading her books for a while, and that's Sarah J. Maas's The Throne of Glass series. I don't know, I did really want to get to, a part of me did still want to get to read the 5th book and then read the 6th book, because I'm a fan of Kale, but just, there was this, like, pressure, and I wasn't feeling the story anymore, I mean, I like it when I read it, but it's just, I wasn't feeling the desire to read it now. So, I'm going to pass on to I'm going to donate it to Gibbons Bookstore, and hopefully some other teenage girl, will appreciate the series. Hopefully she's at least 16 or 18 years old. Plus I feel like the Gibbons seems to have trouble with those fantasy sci-fi selling those books. And a lot of them are older books. Granite Surging, The Throne of Glass is an older series, but it just ended, like, I think last year, so it's not that old. So maybe people will be more interested in that series. I'm keeping my other series by her. I don't know if I'll go out and read that series. I don't know, I'm just kind of moving on from Sarah J. Maas. I mean, there's aspects of her that I don't care about as strongly in her that she includes in her books. But anyway, so yeah, the good thing is it forced me to make a quick decision and take books off my shelf and put them somewhere in a donated pile for the future, like, because I can be a little indecisive person. I always feel like, oh, but maybe I'll read it later in the future. Maybe I'll read it in the future at some point. Like, in fact, I ended up, I've had my brother-in-law's John Adams by David McCullough for so long, and I've heard about it a few times, how great it is, but I just was feeling, I just wasn't feeling the desire to read it. I mean, I kind of want to fix the whole lack of desire to read nonfiction. I do want to fix that. So I'm definitely gonna be more adamant in participating in Nonfiction November, and I'm hoping that if I watch some Nonfiction November TBRs, it will motivate me more. I mean, because nonfiction, it's easier for me to read fiction, and nonfiction can seem a little dry at times. I do think it depends on the subject matter. You have to be, like, really passionate about the subject. And I can always buy a paperback copy of John Adams anyway. I mean, I've seen it at Books A Million, so I'll just give Ryan back his copy. I've had it for a few years now, so I need to give it back to him, because I don't know when I'll ever get around to it, and if I do decide, I can always just buy my own copy at Books A Million. But so I did start reading this a little bit. No, I've gone in at least up to chapter 6, where we've already met Maxim de Winter. I feel so bad for right now. I feel bad for our main character, our protagonist, because the woman that has kind of taken her on and has apprenticed her to her, to train her to be a companion, not in a dirty kind of way, but as in like a friend, like someone hang out, basically a friend. And she is so, like, telling, she makes, first of all, main character is pretty insecure, I think she's even more insecure than me. And, of course, in this modern day and age, I have more freedom, so maybe that also is a contributing factor to because she's in a world where she doesn't have a lot of power and a lot of freedom, and women couldn't. If I'm right in the time period this is taking place, and she can't vote yet, and women are told that they're just meant to find husbands and make babies and keep house and all that stuff, and plus this woman, she's so young. She's younger than I am, and she's basically, she can't do a lot. She likes to draw, but she's made to feel like she doesn't do a lot in life. And she is compared to this woman, Miss Van Hopper, who is constantly like, sit down and shut up and just look pretty, kind of in response to her. Like, she's the woman, Miss Van Hopper, is all like being nosy and interacts with the high society and held her nose up in the air and looked, And she has heard about Maxim de Winter has come to Monte Carlo, and they're at a hotel in Monte Carlo. And she's talking to him and asking about Manderley, because Manderley apparently is a really famous house. And he's like, you can, like, our protagonist, our main character, she can tell this guy's kind of annoyed by Miss Van Hopper constantly asking him about Manderley. And he's kind of standoffish and a little cold at times. And because of that, her first impression is that's who he is as a person. And, like, at one point, our main character, I'm looking at the title, I keep wanting to call our main character Rebecca, but Rebecca's not our main character. Rebecca's the first wife. So our main character is, they have this brief moment where they're kind of connecting for like a few moments. And then later on, after the guy has left, is like, no, I can't join you guys for dinner. I'm doing my own thing. And Miss Van Hopper has the nerve to tell our main character, he's like, I don't like how you dominated the conversation. That was very rude of you. It's like, okay, clearly the guy had no interest in what you had to say, but he was interested in what our main character had to say. He was connecting with her for a second, and then, of course, and then later, when Miss Van Hopper gets sick, De Winter sends our main character a little note saying, I'm sorry I was rude, and then they start hanging out together. And of course, when she first runs into him, our main character's like, oh, you're only doing this because you feel sorry for me, you're just being nice and just being a charitable guy. But he's not. He likes her. He genuinely likes her company, and he tells her so. And they start hanging out, but the problem is she's afraid to tell Miss Van Hopper, because Miss Van Hopper is going to be all condescending towards her and be like, oh, honey, I hope you weren't bothering him, or he was probably just being nice, and you were probably annoying him. And it's like, no, he genuinely likes her. I mean, Miss Van Hopper is the annoying one. I just can't stand her. I just want her to go away. She makes our main character feel so bad about herself. Like, make her feel like she's not good enough, she has to be a certain way. And this one clearly does not. Like, she just, and I guess because of her, the only thing she knows about guys and how most gentlemen are, so she's assuming that Maxim de Winter is like every other guy, every other gentleman. So she thinks she knows what's best and how our main character should act. And she needs to sit in the corner and be quiet. Just like how the whole idea of being seen, not heard. I do not like that. And I am so glad I live in these modern times where I have more power, and then there's no whole mentality. I mean, it's still a problem. There are sometimes it's still there. For some people, depends on your situation. But luckily for me, my parents they're not like the whole mentality of being seen, not heard with me. Anyway, I keep going with this. It's definitely interesting. I can't, and I can see them slowly falling in love. So I keep going with it. I'm really liking it, even if it's not Victorian literature. So as far as Victorian literature goes, I'm still reading Great Expectations. I'm really liking it, and I'm guessing that, I wonder if Katie from Buxton thinks it's probably right, that it probably helps that this probably reads faster because it's first-person narrative. So we are basically, it's kind of like we're reading the diary of Pip. You know, it's not a diary, it's him telling his story from his youth, from his childhood, with his horrible sister who I want to smack sometimes. Hey, it actually makes me think of Oliver Twist, where, like, they make our main little young character feel like he's so ungrateful and he just wants too much and he's a brat. And both in Oliver Twist and in this one with Pip, neither one of those characters was like that. They were not ungrateful. They were not selfish, or they didn't want too much. They were just innocent little boys that wanted to be loved and cared for. And they were very naive and impressionable. And it's just people that make them feel like, oh, you're so ungrateful. And it's like, now at least I like Pip better than Oliver, because Oliver was almost like saintly. He was like so incredibly like good and pure, and he was adorable, but at the same time you're like, after a while he got kind of boring. I mean, I hate to say that, but yeah, he wasn't as engaging. Pip is a little more engaging. He's not as pure and innocent. Like, he stole food from his sister, of course, with the intention to give it to this poor hump bum he found in the cemetery that he had been hanging out in the beginning of the book. He gave him the food. But so it starts out, we meet Pip and see how he's living with his sister and her husband, who is a blacksmith. He's gonna be, when he gets old enough, he's gonna be apprenticed to his brother-in-law Joe. But then I guess he's an uncle. I don't know who Pumblechook. I don't know his relation to the family, if he's just a friend or if he's a relative or whatever. I think he might be an uncle. He gets Pip with this eccentric, weird old lady named Miss Havisham. Who takes Pip in, and he becomes kind of a companion to her. And while he's there, he meets Estelle, who Pip refers to her as the niece, but that might be part of the lie, because when he first goes there and then he comes home, he chooses to lie to his sister and Mr. Pumblechook. He kind of lies to them about what happened there and how things went the first time he went, which I don't really understand why. I guess he wanted to keep his experience there to himself. Or maybe it stemmed from shame or embarrassment, I don't know. But, so, anyway, so he meets Estelle, and she is such a little brat. I want to smack her. But at the same time, I love her character. She's so complex and interesting. She's such an interesting character. And I'm guessing pretty complex of a human being. I'm assuming there's going to be at least a slither of goodness in her. But she is such a brat. It's basically, takes advantage of Pip and is encouraged by Miss Havisham to be that way towards him and treats him horribly. And she and Miss Havisham know that despite the fact that Pip is treated horribly by her, that he'll still slowly see her as more and more beautiful the more because that's what they constantly ask him, like, do you think Estelle's beautiful? And he's like, yeah, sure. It's like, he's like, yes, she is. And not just saying as in, oh, yeah, sure, to get them to shut up. I mean, I think he does slowly. He's, like, falling more and more in love with her the older he gets. The more he discovers, hormones and feelings and all that stuff. And I feel so bad for Pip. I don't even know why, but it's just he doesn't have a lot of experience. The only other female he knows is, his sister, and then all the other older women that his sister knows, the family. And he's so naive, and I hope he gets out of this. I hope he doesn't stay. I hope by the end of the book he escapes them and escapes this life and realizes that there's better out there for him, and there's people who could genuinely love him and treat him kindly. The one good person in his life is his brother-in-law, Joe. He's the only one who treats him kindly with love and respect. they have a friendship and a brotherly love for each other. Like you know, they connect, and Joe does what he can to help Pip and protect Pip from his sister. Although there's only so much he can do because he's the husband. He's afraid of, I imagine he's afraid to stand up to the sister. And I think he does love his wife, and he's a bit blind to her cruelties and her meanness to him and to Pip, because he loves her in his own. I feel bad for people who do that when even though someone is cruel and doesn't deserve their love, they're so devoted to them that they can't see it, that they're blind to it, and they just feel like they make excuses for that person, for their meanness, for their cruelty to you. So that's where I'm at in Great Expectations. I'm really enjoying it. And then I finally I did start reading The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. She does have beautiful writing. She's very good with descriptions, and I definitely get lost in this. I've definitely been have no problem picturing the clothes and the food and the war and all that stuff. And this is set during World War II. And normally I kind of don't like reading World War II novels. I've kind of stepped back, but I've heard a lot about this book, especially from people like Haley and Bookland. And then this was also considered a staff pick at my library, so I went ahead and got it a couple weeks ago, which I think I already talked about a tiny bit. We have our two sisters, Isabel, and I don't know how to say her name. I think I've heard people say Vivienne, but it looks like Vianne to me, the spelling. But then I think it's a French name, so maybe it's pronounced Vivienne. I don't know. But you have their two sisters. Their mom died when they were little, or she died or ran away from that. I think she died. And their father, who was in World War I, kind of goes after the war. He has PTSD, and he can no longer take care of his girls anymore, so he abandons them to live in a home. And ever since then they felt betrayed. They feel like especially Isabel, the youngest, feels like she's not wanted by her father, and then she also feels like she's not wanted by her older sister Vianne, who is still was very young at the time, still a teenager and struggling herself. So it's definitely a story where all these characters, you feel bad for all of them, and you kind of understand all of them. And I don't entirely, it's more like I'm frustrated with them. I can't entirely hate any of the characters for what the choices that they make. Like the father abandoning his girls. Yes, that's horrible, and it makes me angry that he did that. But at the same time, he's going through PTSD, and he experienced his own war. He barely survived the war. So it's hard for him to deal with it. And people, and his wife was gone. It was just him and the girls wouldn't know how to take care of him, how to help their father. They were so young, did not understand it. Not understand why their father would abandon them. How can he not be a father to them? And then Isabel, when he first abandoned, she was just a baby. She was a toddler, and she did not understand why her sister couldn't take care of her. And her sister was just still, she wasn't a baby or a toddler or anything, but she's still a young girl, feeling very alone and very vulnerable. They both did. So it's a very sucky situation all around for all these people. And then on top of that, they're in their own war, World War II. And Vivienne, she's trying to, how she copes with it is pretend it's not happening, or to ignore it, or to the last chapter, the chapter I just read at the library was talking about how they get an announcement from a war hero saying that they need to surrender and choose to side with Hitler. And Isabel does not like this. She's like, I can't believe we're choosing this. We're giving up. And while Vianne was like, it's probably for the best. If this war hero says this, then it's a good thing. it's probably best because she's terrified, doesn't want to deal with war, while Isabel wants to do something with her life, wants to be a hero, wants to fight, she just can't just sit back and wait around because she understands more about what's going on. So it's just a very bad situation. This is a very sad book. Now, I think I remember hearing there was an Insta-Love thing, like in one person review, they mentioned that. And if they did, I think I found it where there's an Insta-Love moment. Although, it's only on Isabel's end, I feel like. Yes, it's Isabel falling in love with someone, thinking she loves someone. It's only on her end on her side, so it's unrequited. So it's like, it's a little weird. It's like, you just met this guy. But then, when I made that comment about Les Mis and how, and I was talking to my dad about it, and I admit that one thing that bothers me is how Marius and Cosette's relationship is kind of insta-lovey. But then my dad put out one thing that you could argue in defense of the couple in this book, that it is during a time of war. So it's like, you could die any second now, so it's like you want to grab onto and hold on to love as fast as you can. The same thing with Phantom of the Opera was the same. It was kind of not a wartime, but people did die really young. And that's actually what Patrick Wilson, who plays Roll in the movie, that's what he was saying, that it feels like people feel like they gotta hold on to love for as fast and as strong as they can, because, you might die. So, like I said, it's not, in Phantom, there's no war going on, but it is during a time where people did die at a really young age, or what we consider really young. But, like I said, in defense of that moment of insta-love, at least first of all, it's only on one end of the relationship, and two, it's during a war, so maybe she's desperate, and also I think it probably stems from the fact that Isabel she feels like people leave her and abandon her. Like her sister did, and her father and her mom did, so it's like she's that mentality of people leave you. Which actually kind of makes me think of on Buffy season 6. That's how Dawn ended up feeling like. Buffy's sister is introduced in season 5. That's how she starts to feel like everyone constantly leaves her. So in season 6, she actually ends up doing, in one episode, she does a spell that accidentally, or she doesn't do a spell, but she accidentally makes a wish to a vengeance demon that people would stop leaving, so it traps them in the house during Buffy's birthday. So, yeah, but Isabel kind of made me think of Dawn a little bit. So actually, now I'm thinking about it, that's probably who I would picture as Isabel. I would like to see the actress, I would like to see the actors who play Dawn do other stuff other than contemporary soap opera dramas. I think I would like to see her do something historical. But yeah, that's only because Isabel kind of reminds me of the character Dawn a little bit, with less screaming. It's like there's aspects of her that make me think of Dawn, and then there's other aspects that make me think of Buffy with that character. So now as for the other books I got from the library, okay, so I still have these two. Edith Wharton's short story collection, which is not Victorian literature because it's American literature, so it wouldn't be considered Victorian literature because Queen Victoria never ruled America. So I'm still gonna try, and this is a bunch of short stories, so it shouldn't be, and I've already read one of them years ago and did not like it, and that was Ethan's From. It was kind of boring to me. Madame Tremais, I'm gonna read that one. Summer, Old New York, The Mother's Recompense, and A Backward Glance, I think, is actually kind of a biography. Oh, this one also has a bookmark. Okay, good. So I don't have to do a book. I don't have to get a bookmark for this one. So I don't really have much to say about that one. I'm going to start it soon. And then this is actually a collection of Dickens short stories, which I've already so I'm going to start this one soon, which this one has a lot more stories. But because it doesn't have as many, I should probably read the Ian Worthen collection first and start that one because it won't take as long. I mean, it will still take a long time, but it's not as many. So I love this naked hardback edition. It's so pretty. Like I said, I love that it looks like one of my things that gets my attention as far as looks, not just the colored pages, although this could just be worn, this being an age, just be like mean that it's really aged, it's really an old book. But I like how it looks like it does look like an old book. And one of the things I like that gets my attention with books, but I don't always buy them unless I can get them really cheap, is when it looks very old-fashioned, like it looks like a really old book. Even if it was published recently. What is this? This obviously is an old book. I don't know how old this edition is, so let's look. Let's look at the copyright date. '71. Yep, so this was 1971 is the copy. So it's pretty old, but it's not bad old. It's not like 1800s old. It's like old as old as my parents. So, like I said, I probably won't do the Edith Wharton. So the books I ended up getting 4 books. I tried to resist getting 4 books. I even ended up putting some books back that I picked up and looked at for a minute. But again, I ended up still with 4 books. So, first I picked up My Sister the Serial Killer, which was on the Women's Prize this year. Pretty small and pretty short book. About this young woman who has a sister who has had a lot of boyfriends, and then they mysteriously end up dead, I want to say, and her sister ends up coming to her, I think her sister ends up coming to her work and meets the guy that her sister has a crush on. And our main character has a crush on. And the sister and the guy end up dating, I think. So it puts her in a very compromising position. And it really looks at the whole idea of a sister relationship, and I think it looks at feminism a little bit. It looks at feminism and so that it's a small book, like literally. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to get I wanted to actually. How much is this? Let's see. Yeah, it's more expensive in Canada. I felt bad for one of the booktubers I watched that's Canadian always constantly talking about how things are so much more expensive in Canada, and I feel really bad for her because especially also with the whole, I think she was talking about the Canada mail delivery system isn't that great either. So, and this was also a stat pick. I didn't notice that. So yeah, the people in my library agree that this deserved to be on the list. But yeah, this is one I was debating about reading, and then I saw it at the library. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pick it up. I'm gonna get it. So I don't have to I didn't spend the money. I didn't waste the money in case I don't like it. And then the other three, okay, so I am also got, now this one I actually have a copy of this one, because I have a collection of Steinbeck's short novels, but I decided because it's kind of hard to read that, although it's a little bit, that one's a little bit smaller in size compared to like my collection of Dickens and Shakespeare novels, or even Jane Austen. It's a smaller book compared to that, but it's still not one that I can easily travel with. So I ended up grabbing this one. And that is Canary Row. I don't know anything about it. And I like this edition. I mean, if I really like it, I might want to buy an edition like this. I don't know if it would be at Books A Million, but it's really nice. Like, it's blue, with bronze writing on it. I mean, it looks like an octopus and the initial, and I think this, I don't know if this is just the author's initial, last name initial or not, but, or maybe there's a character with an S name in the book. And this is another one with colored pages, which I really like that aesthetic of colored pages. But I don't know anything about this. I don't know if Canary Row refers to like a prison, or maybe it refers to like the special institute of some kind. So this is Penguin Drop Caps. Collectible books from A to Z. I like some of these books. They're nice and cute looking. Although they probably are like 20 to 30 bucks. That's probably like getting collector's editions of books of these books, is because they're collector editions, they're gonna be charged for a lot more. So, but it's a nice edition. So if I like it, who knows, I might get them, but for other books. Because this one, oh, yep, S is for Steinbeck. So I guess it goes by alphabetical order of the author. Yep, so it goes, this letter goes by the authors. So I'm gonna read this one. And it looks like a short one, and it is part of his short novels collection. So I got a couple short books from the library today. Now these last two aren't as short, but I had saw this at the library. I have debated about checking out D.H. Lawrence. I don't know if I want to actually buy any of his books because I don't know if I'll like them. Of course, I did take the risk and buy Anthony Trollope because I've heard a lot about him from Katie from Books and Things. And I've seen this one at the bookstore, but I was like, I don't know if I'm interested. So this is Sons and Lovers. And it's about a young man. He's looking for a wife, but but none of them compared to his mother, whom he has put on a pedestal because his father is not there for him, and he has a really good relationship with his mother. So I feel like I would be picturing, when I read it, I could probably picture like Eddie Kasprek from It. Although his mom was not a good person. His mom was not a good person. She was horrible. But I mean, a lot of times, sons and daughters fall in love with people that remind them of their parents, which might seem a little gross. But I mean, just the personality is very similar to their parents, because your parent is the first person you express love to. Which, yes, it is a different, and obviously it's a different kind of love, but it's still your first glimpse of love is for a parent. And they're someone you look up to, admire, respect, and they're the one who protects you, so it's like you look up to them, and so it makes sense that sometimes, psychologically, you fall for someone that reminds you of that parent. And then, also, I feel because of that, I come up with a theory that a lot of times, and I don't know if I'm right about this, I'm no psychologist, and I'm just going by what I feel. And my belief is that your parents are the first people you love, and your sibling is like your first friend. Like, now, I don't know, none of my friends are like my sister in personality, so I'm not going in the same direction, but I do feel like, that's the first best friend you have is a sibling, so it's like, you always will have a strong bond with your sibling unless you never had a bond with them to begin with. So that's just something I also kind of thought about when I was thinking about the whole idea of the theory of people falling in love with falling in love with someone that reminds them of their parent. So I don't this one also has that. Some of these books have like a paper, like have a piece of paper inside of the flap. But maybe it's to keep I don't know, maybe it's to keep, there's probably some kind of reason. So I cannot go into completely blind into a book. I have to I always read the back. And I know there are some people say that there's spoilers in the back, so I don't read it that thoroughly. I just read it, look at it, and read it for like a second. So I can see what the book is about. Because I'm not as cautious and careful with my money as I should be. Like, for instance, again, I'm bringing it to Terry, but she is one of my best friends. She is someone who doesn't just go buy books like I do. She has to read the first chapter, see if she's going to like it, see if she likes the character, she has to know about the book. And then a lot of times when she goes to the bookstore, she'll just stay there and read the book. But unless she really is enjoying it, she won't buy it. Because she can't, she couldn't afford, she can't always, just afford to have a whole bunch of books. Like, that's one of the ways I'm lucky, is that I'm decent financially, but I still have to be careful, of course. Sometimes I wonder if my parents are worried that I'll end up like my grandmother, when it comes to money, or my aunt. But anyway, so I don't buy, But anyway, where we're similar is that I do have to kind of know at least a little bit about the book before I buy it. I can't just randomly buy a book. Although I'm pretty easy to please. So I like reading the back summary. I don't do cover buys. I definitely am more aware of covers. But like I said, I liked that edition of the Steinbeck book. But I don't do cover. I've never bought a book just because I like the cover. Because I have some books with not so nice covers, and I have no problem buying mass market paperbacks, even though they're not always as aesthetically pleasing. They're cheap, portable, and you still get the book. It's just smaller print, which can be annoying. And it's not always a nice cover. Actually, speaking of covers, so I finished Wuthering Heights, as I talked about earlier, and it shows on your reading challenge the books and that you've read, and I couldn't find my copy of Wuthering Heights because you have to get the exact number of pages. Because you could get away with, if it has more pages, you could get away with just using a book that has more pages than your copy that you're reading, because then you can just say you don't have to make sure you get all the way to the end to say you're done with the book. That's why I'm able to include DNFs on my Goodreads challenge. So really, I don't think I've read 83 books. Or finished. I have not finished 83 books. Or maybe it's 84 now. I don't know. I'll have to look. But anyway, so I didn't have the cover. The one I had no cover on it. So when I finally finished it and put it on my Goodreads challenge, I ended up changing the edition because it was a blank cover. Because it's like, I want all the books on there to have covers, nice, pretty covers to look at, even though it doesn't really matter in the end. So I ended up, and it's like, I finished the book anyway, so it doesn't matter which edition I pick, you know? It may not be the one I read, but it's still, you know, it's just showing which books I've read and how long it took me to read it. So I ended up changing the edition of that one. So yeah, I'm definitely more aware of aesthetically pleasing book covers. Which this one is nice. This one's really pretty. It looks like it's an artwork. So I'm going to read this one. This one will probably take me a long time to read. And, you know, who knows, maybe I'll decide, you know, I'm just going to buy it. Of course, by the time I decide I'm going to buy it, it's probably not going to be at the bookstore anymore. Which actually reminds me. Also, one last thing I'm going to show you before I finish this up. But I also finally ended up getting this one from the library. The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. I read Practical Magic. I remember really enjoying it. It was very different from the movie. And as someone else put it in a review, basically they took a lot of the really engaging parts from the book and composed them into a movie. Like, they took out all the extra stuff that wasn't as interesting to read, but it was part of the story. Like, there is a lot more in the book, and the book is a little edgier than the movie itself, from what I remember. So this is is a prequel book. Now I don't know. I haven't really read the description of it. I just know it has to do with so it's a prequel, and it has to deal with the character Susanna Owens. Oh, okay, so okay, so it's about so it's Jet and Franny's when they're growing up. Oh, okay, so it's about Jet and Franny's daughters. And Susanna is their mom. It's about the mom. Okay, so it's so good. So it's about the aunts when they're growing up. Which, yeah, that's good. And that's what, which I was wondering if they were gonna be in this story. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to it's called The Rules of Magic. So, I think that you could probably get away with reading this. If you haven't read Practical Magic, you could probably get away with reading this one first. I mean, I don't know. I haven't cracked open the book yet, but I feel like you could probably get away with reading this one since it's a prequel and it's about the aunts. And then you could read, then you can read Practical Magic. But, which, who knows, I might do that because I have seen that one at the library too. Because I feel like with prequels, I personally, because it was written after the original book, so I feel like, okay, you know, it was written after, so I should read, so it doesn't matter if I decide to read it before. But there are some people who choose to read prequels first because they're before the events of the original book, so it's like, oh, maybe you should, even though it was written after the fact, that you should still read it first now that it's out. So, I mean, if you haven't read the original, then you could get away with, because it's about the events before, so it's probably about characters that are in the original, but they're the characters, like older characters, that were older in the original. Okay, so before I end this really long video, I'm just gonna do a, oh wait, never mind, I don't have to do that, because I forgot I did do a video. I was gonna show you the Thomas Hardy books I got. Oh wait, maybe not. Okay, yeah. I haven't talked about those yet, because I talked about the books I got the 3 books I got last time, which were the 2 Anthony Trollope books from the Barchester series. I don't know how to say it. I have to listen to how Katie says it on books and things. And then with those 2, I also got the Gregory Maguire book. That was a retelling of the Nutcracker. Okay, so I ended up getting 2 books, on Monday. Monday. Yeah, I think Monday, because I was off on Monday. And I worked yesterday, so I didn't go yesterday. And I'm off today. So, yeah, so it was Monday when I went and I got these 2 books. I decided to stick to 2 books this time. And I got these Penguin editions of, although every time I see Penguin, I always think of Mr. Popper's Penguins. That book, I remember my aunt gave it to me, I think. Or she let me borrow it, I remember. And now, so every time I see the Penguin edition books, I always think of that book. Penguin English Library editions. So I finally got around to getting some Thomas Hardy. He's the guy who wrote Far From the Madding Crowd, which became a movie a couple years ago, starring what is her name from I think it's the actress from Education. Not the non-fiction, but the fiction about the English girl who falls for an older man. She's like a student, high school student, but she was the actress in Far From the Madding Crowd as well. I think it's her. But anyway, so I haven't got that one, but I did get these 2, which are The Mayor of Casterbridge, which from the little bit of the back I've read, like I said, I only read a little bit, just to know what it's about. This guy who's the mayor of this town or city or whatever, he has a very dark history, a sinful history, and it's trying to keep that history from getting out. And then Jude the Obscure is about this guy who's a stonemason who has these academic ambitions, but poverty keeps him from fulfilling those ambitions, and the only good thing is his relationship with this woman, Sue Bridehead. So, those are the 2 Thomas Hardy books. So I'm slowly continuing to build my classics collection, and hopefully, I really hope my mom gets me a shelf for Christmas, but I don't know, because she's been, like I said, she has expressed concern that if she gets me another shelf, then that means I'm gonna buy more books. But either way, I'm gonna do that, which I told her. So I don't know if that will consider that will she'll still be determined. But I think because of that little argument we had, it's more of a motivation to make sure I read, because I've sadly only read a handful of my books in the library. But to be fair, I have gotten rid of a lot of books that I've read. So I'm going to make sure, either starting this winter or into next year, like I said, and it's part of my goals, that I read more, go through my shelf, get better at going through my shelf and reading more books on my shelf. Of course, the other problem is, and this time, which I demonstrated today with all the books I got from the library today, is that when I get books from the library, I neglect my own library. So I need to work on that. I need to be better at it. I mean, although I have to admit, part of the also travel kind of messes me up, because then I'm thinking, oh, I gotta show I'm reading this book, and I want to read this book with me, and oh, I've neglected this one, so I should bring this one to read. And of course, I always tell myself that, oh, there's certain books that I can't bring with me because they're hard to read. Whenever I go to visit, when I'm in the car, go to my sister's house, because there's a lot of distractions there. So, but I still bring books that I know it's hard to read when I go there. So anyway, enough rambling. So that's this is kind of a chatty video on what's been going on with my reading, a little update on Booktober. And If you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you have not already happened to be passing through and decide to watch this video. And I hope you guys are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to you all later, and happy Victober. Bye!